creator of Talent Innovation Series. I am here today live with Dr. Wayne Pernell, and just to give you a bit of the setting, I will be looking at you, having a conversation through this camera, and looking at my notebook here, just in case any one of you have any questions or just a comment for us. Feel free to put in the chat box. We would welcome any questions from you with regards to what's the leadership skills and abilities needed for the future, and what can you do if you are a leader in terms of developing yourself and the pipeline of leaders that you are building. I have with me again today Dr. Wayne Pernell, all the way from the US. Thank you, Wayne, for joining us despite having a very full day today.
Yes, what a great day, and it's time to build some leadership.
Yes, so just a bit of a background why Wayne and I are particularly interested in leaders and building the leadership pipeline. Both of us are limited numbers. There are less than 200 of us in terms of certified high performance coaches, and Wayne and I are very much focused in terms of building leaders because we believe that leaders build the organization's culture, and certainly is a key role model in terms of the leaders that will be following behind them or with them or actually leading ahead of them, depending on the situation. And therefore, for us, leaders are very important. For me personally, I'm particularly interested in leaders and building leadership pipeline because I see an increasing diversity in the workplace and talent pool. And it is important for us as leaders to consider every one of our talent as possibilities for the leadership pipeline. So for me, the conversation will be peppered with what are some of the insights that I have in terms of working across the different generations, working with women in particular, and what they bring to the leadership team. Wayne, why your particular interest in terms of leaders and leaders for the future?
Sure, yeah, I'll be looking at not only generational, but industries, right? I work with leaders across industries from food services, hospitality, medical, dental, and all the way through high tech, finance. So I'm seeing leadership at multiple levels across multiple industries, and certainly keeping your finger on the pulse of who's coming up is not only who can support you, but who can support the organization as you make transitions for yourself. So that'll be my focus as we talk a little bit today too.
Absolutely. Okay, great. So we will also be at the same time bringing you perspectives of what we see happening in the US and on that side of the world, and then for myself in Asia on this side of the world, and just to bring you insights. Remember, as leaders we are all learners to start with. So let's just kick off with, in Wayne and my opinion, as we see what's unfolding, what are the top 5 leadership abilities or skills that we feel is needed in 2025, for example, but absolutely something that you can start developing right now and in fact start leveraging right now. Wayne, would you like to get us started?
Well, I was going to ask you, Cheryl, if you wanted to talk about background first, like why are we here, right? Why us?
Oh, go ahead, Wayne.
Okay. So our viewers, you get to watch us, you get to talk to us because of our backgrounds, because we're here. We've seen a lot. We've seen a lot. Both Cheryl and I have each seen different things, and we come together and we talk about the trends that we're seeing. My background, I'm an award-winning best-selling author. My background, it's Dr. Wayne Pernell. My background is the doctorate's in clinical psychology, which I took into business about 30 years ago. So in that time, I've been doing management consultation, executive coaching, and working with leaders from mid to senior level leaders across all industries, as I said. So, and Cheryl mentioned that we are high performance coaches. We are certified high performance coaches, which means that what we look for in leadership and what we develop, we're looking for clarity, energy, courage, productivity, and influence. And we're looking for those in whoever we work with to bring it up even a percentage point or 2 percentage points. Imagine your day if you built those in just a small increment. So then you asked, what are the 5 key traits that we're seeing in leaders? What makes us better leaders, both now and in the future? Cheryl, do you want me to list 5, or do you want me to list 1 and then we'll talk about it? How do you want to do that?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead with your list and talk through them and some of the implication, and then I have my take on the 5, and then together we can then look at how we can help you, our audience, and our precious people who are going to give us some questions. In fact, I have anticipated some questions coming in. How you can build your own learning plan, because we are all busy people, and leaders tend to learn on the go. So let's go through the 10 abilities or skill sets needed, and then we head straight into developing your learning plan. Wayne, why don't you get us started?
Okay. I was just going to say, you know, what I look for, my business is called dynamicleader.com. Dynamicleader.com. And really what I look for in leaders are things that make you the dynamic leader. I put together a list of 5 C's. 5 C's. The first one is clarity. You have to be really clear about where you're headed. Because if you're not clear, your followers, the people that line up behind you, aren't going to be clear either. And so spend some time. You're going to want to spend some time to create a vision. Who are you? What values do you hold? And when you do that, you're going to be honing out the things or weeding out the things that you're not. And it's really important that you're clear about what are you, what do you stand for, and where are you headed. The other thing about clarity and vision is that you don't just know where you're headed, but you're very, very, very clear about what this year holds, what 6 months from now holds, what this year holds, what 3 years from now holds, and where you're headed in 5 years. That's how you get people lined up behind you, a really solid vision and a really solid plan. The second C is credibility. Credibility. And that means that people are going to challenge you along the way. And so I fold in a not C word, not a not C word along with that. So that's flexibility. So credibility and flexibility need to go hand in hand. You're going to be pushed. You're going to be challenged about, do you really think that's the right direction to head? Is this, are you sure? Or I don't want to, or I think people should follow me, and they'll challenge you directly. And so what you need to be able to do is be really clear, that goes back to clarity, and be very firm that we will be flexible because there are many paths in how you get there. There are many paths in how you get there. Really, the outcome is what you're after, and that's what you're going to be describing to your team members and to your stakeholders. So, you know, it's not just the workers, it's the vendors, it's your customers, it's your board members, it's anybody who holds a stake in your vision needs to know that you're clear about it and that you mean it. So credibility is really say what you mean and then do what you say. It's action taking. And you may find obstacles, but the thing is you have to be flexible to get around those obstacles so that your pathway leads you to the outcome that you've been talking about. The third C, so we've got clarity, we've got credibility. The third C is courage. Courage, oh, because you know what? Yeah. You are going to be challenged. You are going to need to do some hard things. Sometimes it's hiring somebody, sometimes it's shifting departments, sometimes it's saying the hard stuff. And that's a technical term, stuff. So saying the things that are really difficult to be said, or having the meeting that's difficult to have. Even if it's difficult, you have to dig down deep, go back to your credibility, know that you are drawing on your credibility, knowing that you're drawing on your clarity. So these things stack on each other. You've got clarity, you've got credibility. Now you've got courage, which means action steps. You're taking the action that's required to get you to the vision that you're clear about. So those things stack. That's the top 3. The fourth one, so you've got it, clarity, credibility, along with flexibility. courage. The fourth one, the fourth C, is communication. Communication. So that comes in many forms. And I've seen it done very well, and I've seen it done very poorly. The poorest way of communicating is when leaders have the concept in their head of what they're going to say. They drive to work. They've already had a conversation in their head, and then they're partway through a conversation and they blurt something out. And I've seen that happen over and over again, where leaders believe that if they've had a conversation in their head, everybody else should know what they're thinking about. And that is it's a setup for failure. So you want to be able to have good communication, and think about this in terms of communication planning. Who's your audience? What do they need to know in order to really understand your vision? Because you have to assume that they don't know anything about what you are envisioning or where you want to head. So what do they need to know? Then what's the best medium by which to teach them or to tell them? Are you going to hold in-person meetings? Are you going to pick up the phone? Are you going to do a web-based communication? Are you going to send out a memo? Are you going to do all of those things? Because sometimes that's important. So know what you're going to say, know who your audience is, who you're going to say it to, know also then what medium to use, and the fourth piece of that is know what your timing is. Because sometimes you have to time the communication multiple times. You have to let people know over and over, and we're at this stage. We're now exiting this stage. We're at this stage. We're now exiting this stage. We're at this stage. So those are the key pieces for communication. We've got clarity. We've got credibility. We've got courage. We've got communication. And the fifth one is a C that is circling back. It's a C that sounds like an S. All right. So it's circling back. How will you know that you've done what you set out to do? So not only do you have to have a vision, but you have to come around and see that you've actually completed the tasks required for that vision. And certainly there are more traits than just 5 that are needed for leaders. And we're talking about the top 5. So I've weeded some out here and there. And I think that if you're able to circle back, I think it was Zig Ziglar who said you have to inspect what you expect. And so really look for what are the things that you're after? What are the key markers, the key milestones? And you have to be checking on those. Did we make it? Did we make it? Did we make it? Did we make it? So every step of the way, you're going to be checking. Did you get the results that you were after? Or do you have to start over with some tweaks? And then if you do, what's going to happen is you begin again with clarity, right? So you've got this, you've got to start with clarity. So again, my top 5 are clarity, credibility along with flexibility, courage, communication, and circling back. Make sure that you've completed the things that need to be completed to make it happen.
Right, right. But actually, if you look at it, some of the skills that is needed for the future are, as you mentioned, are skills that actually is needed right now to get, and to be leveraged and built even more upon. Well, my 5 happens to be C's too, and yes, there are 2 that I think that's such a big and important area, and it does overlap. And for me, after kicking off, it's clarity, but it is even more critical, I feel, in a business environment that's a lot more uncertain and there's a lot of ambiguity. People need to have the sense of that the leader has a sense of clarity, despite not knowing like how we're going to get there, but we know that that's our destination, and that's why we will be in the journey together with whoever is leading us. And I think that's important, that we are able to describe the final stage. And I remember there was somebody that I was working with, and the way that he described the future was something that his company would never envision and never thought possible. But people saw where he was trying to get them, and they believed in that. And despite having to experiment with new ways to get there, they went along with the total plan, and they they eventually got there, and the company is doing extremely well now. Totally a different change in terms of the mental models, a change in the focus of their business. But it's all because of a leader who looked into the future, and even more so now with all, you know, a lot of more that's happening in terms of regulation and change in business environment, that we need to make sure that as leaders, we are clear. What's our destination? How does it look like? It's the journey of getting there that we need to enlist others and to enlist their ideas as to how to get there. And that's where I go on to my next C is actually enlisting others. Would sometimes needs you to have that courage. The courage, like Wayne said, the courage sometimes to be different, because everybody is saying the same thing, and you're going to be saying that, no, I think that's where we should be heading. And this is why I think so. And this is what the future looks like. Having the courage, despite what the majority is saying about, is probably not new to leaders, but it's going to be even more critical because there's going to be a lot of noise around. And you know, if you want to be able to do more, you need to be more. And in order to be more, many a times it takes us as leaders to have that courageous step to take a different step forward. So I do feel that going to the future, courage is going to be a very key piece. Many a times it might be saying or doing things that doesn't seem to be logical, or the majority doesn't feel so, but you as a leader, that's where you are placed in that position to be able to bring in a different voice where needed. The next C I have is communication, but a slightly different take from what Wayne has said. I look at communication in terms of, as a leader, know when to employ the different tools that you have, know when to employ the different communication opportunities that you have. So you might have a very set plan, but in communication, know when to seize the day, because sometimes a tweet may come in and it would help you reinforce certain things that you have been communicating right on that. So it's not just having a set plan for your comms, but be able to join the dots and see whatever that's available, whatever, you know, there's a lot of communication that's happening around us as leaders. Which are the pieces that you will be leveraging on to build on that momentum? It could be on any of the social media platform. It could be in the more traditional town halls and all. But as a leader, know when to seize the day in that communication arena to reinforce your message. And reinforce in a manner where your diverse workforce, of course, or your diverse marketplace would be able to consume that message that you are sending out to them. So being very aware in terms of when it would be an internal post, and then followed up by a tweet, maybe just a very short, you know, summary to your younger, the younger folks in your workplace. And you know, for that matter, I was just with in a conference the other day, and we had senior, you know, we have baby boomers tweeting away of their learning of from the conference. So take time to see what's my message, what's my set plan, but be very aware what are your people already talking about, and be able to jump in and leverage on what they're talking about, because then it will resonate with them. And that's what communication needs to be, to find the resonance within the people, so that people really know, not just read or heard, but people really know what you're trying to say and the message that you're getting across. So it's, for me, it's clarity, courage, and then communication in terms of having a set plan, but being able to so clear of what are your messages, that every single moment that there's an opportunity, you find a way to be reinforcing that. The next one I have is about creating commons. I do a lot of work around diversity and inclusion. I work across different industries and across different countries. So one of the very interesting thing for me is, how do we create commons amongst the people group that we have? And by that, I'm not saying that, it's this group has this view and that group has that view, then let's take a a very collaborative view. What I'm saying is that what's important, what is the one or two most important thing for these groups of people, and then let's find a common ground within their top priorities. And from there, don't stop there. As a leader, set a higher standard in this common ground so that it eventually becomes a shared common ground. You're not just building common ground, it's a shared common ground because this higher standard, this higher view, this higher value is built upon that which is important to them in the first place. There's going to, your talent pool is probably, looking back in my own team, we are all around the world, and it's challenging sometimes. There will be disputes and conflicts all around, but what are some of the common goals, and the higher standards, the higher service that we want to deliver to our audience is what we build my team on. And my team very much look towards the future, what's happening in the horizon, and that's the value that we bring to our clients and the leaders in those organizations. So we help organization and we help leaders. You need to know what are what's the common ground, and as a leader, how do you build a higher level overlaying that common ground. The last one I have is on constructive depolarization. And I know that's a very big word for some of us, but it's really about us as leaders having our own views, yes, but also being able to take in the views of the different groups that we speak to, right? Having very diverse view within our heads and withholding judgment. So as your team member, for example, speak up, you do not already compartmentalize it and say, no, that's not it, no, that's not it. But bringing all the views together, different views together, and let it brew. And as it brew, you might have insights that would serve you, or you might really just take one position, which is supported by some of the members. But before you get to that space, take in the constructive depolarization of all the views that is being spoken in your head without passing on the judgment, so that you can truly, truly glean the wisdom that is within the room, that the quietest voice has spoken and you did not lay a judgment. And you are then able to have a more collaborative conversation because people know that you're not going to judge them based on what they have said, that you truly want to consider what they have to bring to the table. So these are my 5 with regards to leading into the future. I won't say leading in the future, because hey, we are moving towards there every single day. So leading into the future, my top 5 would be clarity, even more so courage, communication in terms of being able to join the dots, leveraging every single moment, every single platform, whether social or traditional, that you have, looking at building common grounds, but really bringing the common grounds to the next level so that you build a new shared common goal or common vision built on those common grounds that the people come with. And be very aware in terms of our own minds, passing on judgment, to be able to hold the constructive depolarization of views before we come to a conclusion. So that's my 5, Wayne. Any thoughts around those?
Yeah, I love it. Obviously we were taking notes on each other's, which I really think is great. What I liked is that you talked about communication building resonance with the current conversation, and that's how you engage. That's how you build better communication. I really like that. It's about resonance. It's about hearing what's happening and setting that higher standard, getting in and offering your vision that maybe injects a different perspective than what's being talked about now. So that, that's the whole purpose of a mastermind, by the way, right? Obviously, yes. That you have a vision, I have a vision, we get together, now we have shared, right? So we've both grown as a result of sharing a perception.
Yes.
So, yes. in communication, it's not just one way, it's got to be multi-way. So I really like that. And then you talked about setting a higher standard, and you know, you do that with vision and with clarity, and I think that's really important, that it's not just, well, come in and set a higher standard. It's not command. Leadership is not always about command because I said so. Leadership is about creating this new place that other people can aspire to get to with you. So I think that that's really important. I really appreciated those pieces.
So we've set for you, those of us that are watching and listening in, those are our top 10 in terms of what we see you can start getting, you know, yourself developed in, or if you're already developed in that, be able to hone those skills, because those are the abilities and skills that is going to be, you know, that will lead you into the future. And as I see it in terms of future trends, there will be shorter cycles in terms of businesses. There's going to be more complexity, and you know, in both the business environment and in the talent pool that's going to be available. So there's no better time for you than to start right now to begin to build your own learning. And before you say, you know, Cheryl and Wayne, I'm too busy, you know, I don't have time to go for training and all those things. Well, let us now put on our hats as coaches, Wayne. How can they learn, build their own learning plan, and how can they learn? And what are some of the tools or resources that they can, that leaders now can employ to enhance their own learning ability and experience?
That's great. Well, most leaders are doing a lot of self-learning anyway. They're also scheduling calls with coaches, which is important. Most of the leaders that I work with, obviously, if they're working with me, they're working with a coach. Most have worked with coaches in the past, and that's what allowed them to get to a greater level of leadership. You know, that it's, if you knew it all, you'd be running the world, you know, and so really the whole idea is that you can't ask a fish what water is like, because they're in the water. They don't have a frame of reference. Don't ask a picture what the frame is like, because they're in the picture, right? And that's the whole idea, is that sometimes an expert has an expert with another perception is what you get a coach for. And so how do you get to be a better leader is by getting a coach. And I know, Cheryl, you do this too, that we set our schedules in terms of calls and in terms of working with leaders based on your needs and a mutual time. Sometimes that's off hours. That's okay.
Yeah, I like, you know, I before you get on to next, I like what you said about, you know, you can't ask a fish what's water like, because it's always been in the water. And it's very surprising to me sometimes when I go in and about to start coaching with a coach, or and for that matter, training their leaders. One of the first questions they ask me is, have you had experience in our industry? And I think that with for me, there are two schools of thought. One, if you know our industry, you know what it's all about, and you can find, you know what the pain points, etc. But I think there's also a value, and I think now even a bigger value in bringing somebody in that is of a diverse, that brings in a diverse thinking into your industry, because that might precisely be in the industry that needs that diverse thinking. Think about you know, think about the world of film, you know, of photography, right? From the film world to now digital world. Think about the world of the newspapers, and now, you know, everything, the breaking news may not come through traditional print. So I feel sometimes it's very interesting how organizations choose which coach that they will want to employ. And it's just very interesting how some of our clients do think, you know, when they bring us in, they say, you know, have you had, you know, Cheryl, have you had experience coaching senior leaders in the finance industry? And then it's a yes or no. And so very often I ask them, why would you think that's necessary? And then I would then share with them what value I'll bring to the table, what additional perspective that's needed actually as a leader than a regular contributor, right?
Well,
and
I
love it when you say you can't ask the fish what water is, because the fish has been in the water all the time.
One of the things that works in major industries, it doesn't matter which industry, is to have cross-departmental team meetings, right? Where you have representatives from each department talking about what's going on in their area. That's how you get that kind of fertile, creative mindset to bloom even further. Well, bringing someone else in who's got a different perspective altogether is going to help you even more. So I have a couple more things to say.
Okay, sorry, I just interrupted you. It's just that I concur that it's very interesting in terms of your fish analogy.
I'm glad that one got to you. That's great. So I was gonna do show and tell right here that if people want to develop themselves, that my first book is called Choosing Your Power, and it's about stepping into your greatness and really finding your voice and really creating that space to deliver your voice. And it doesn't matter whether you're a senior leader or a soccer mom or both, that you can be both, right? You can be the soccer mom who is a senior leader. And everyone in between, men, women, etc., can really step in, and you learn to stop giving yourself away while you are developing yourself even further. The other book, and this is where leaders often learn on their own, the other book is with Brian Tracy, and it's called The Winning Way. In it, the chapter that I want you to focus on is called Meaning Maker Leadership. And actually, if you go to, I've got all these show and tell pieces, if you go to dynamicleader.com, you'll be able to download a workbook for yourself for free on Meaning Maker Leadership. And it's the steps that you need to take from really getting clear to following through to, it starts with vision. Who are you? What matters to you? It's a great workbook. It is for free. It's available at dynamicleader.com.
Right, so there are resources out there to already get us started. Anything else, Wayne, in terms of helping our audience, our people that's watching this video or listening in, to start building their leadership skills that's needed into the future?
Well, I know that you and I talked about what are some of the main questions that we're asked sometimes, right? So, one of the main questions that I'm confronted with, there are two when I talk about the 5 traits of leaders, the clarity and the courage. They always seem to focus on those. And it's like, well, what if I'm not clear? What if I don't even know what I want, or what if, right? What if, like, I know what I want, but I don't know what I want. I know that I want it to be better.
Right.
Well, what's better, right? So clarity really counts. And so the question that comes up is, how do I get more clear? How do I get more clear, even more clear, right? And the way to do that is to actually sit with yourself. You need a journal. You need to ask yourself a couple of things. One is, what are your personal values? Your personal values. What do you care about? And when you can define what you care about, then you get to look at, is that what you're doing in your business? Because if what you care about is totally opposite to what you're doing in your business, then there are two things. You're either in the wrong job, or you're in the job wrong. And so really you have to determine that. And sometimes you'll see in your pipeline, in the people you're developing, they may be in the wrong job. If they're showing up in the job wrong, they may actually be in the wrong job. So you're going to have to look at that. How do you get more clear? One of the things that I ask my coachees, the people that I do coach and mentor, one of the things I ask them is not what do you want out of life, or what do you want as your next step, but really the question I ask is, what would you treasure? Because if you can get to a place of, wow, I care about this thing, I care about developing people, I care about my family, I care about, pick something that you would treasure and choose to nurture. And that's how you get even that incremental step more clear. There are a bunch of things that, I mean, Cheryl and I, walk our clients through multiple steps to get that sense of clarity. Those are just a few key points to get there. The other piece is,
sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Are you still on clarity, or are you getting onto a different point? Because I've got something to add on to clarity.
Oh yeah, please. I was going to talk about courage next. So
okay.
Yeah.
So for me in clarity, when I work with my and I think there's that you can't just say, okay, let's just pause and then I'm going to think about clarity now. It's an ongoing journey. So if you want to develop a greater heightened sense of clarity as a leader going into the future, journaling is great. Having time to it is not arriving at a destination in terms of clarity. It's about a discovery of yourself and where you want to bring your organization. It's having the information, but giving yourself the permission to maneuver, but always heading towards that direction and that destination. And like what Wayne said, what you treasure in my book. I deal a lot with women and women leadership, the 24-hour woman. We deal with it and we coin it as what matters most to you. Because as a leader or as a leader of an organization, what matters most to the organization? That's probably where you are going to get the greatest sense of resonance with the right people you want in your organization. And then
notice the question.
Yeah.
Notice the questions. Notice the questions we ask. Like I ask, what would you treasure? And you say, what matters most? Neither of us say, what do you want?
Yeah.
What do you want to get?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We talk about what matters to you.
Right.
So great.
And therefore, as you developing your leadership pipeline and they go on their own discovery in terms of their clarity, they have to ask themselves what matters most to them, what matters most to them in their organization. And I talk about it in terms of what's the legacy work that you want to leave behind in your professional life. And that's basically what you want to be known for as a leader. So as you go into the pipeline, you might find you discover you have a sense of clarity for yourself and where you want to lead the organization. Be able to have conversation with men and women in your pipeline. What do they envision for themselves and for their organization? And find the resonance as to who do they aspire to be? What's their aspiration? Because as you build your leadership pipeline, that's where you can then interweave their aspiration into what the organization is about. And as a leader, you are leading them through the pathway into the future, but their whole self is very intact as to who they want to be. Goes along with you in that particular journey. And I feel that in terms of clarity, that's an important piece, particularly for you leading in developing your leadership pipeline, that the individual's aspiration needs to be interwoven into what the organization is about, particularly when you're working with the younger generation of leaders. You need to bring them on board and find that resonance much earlier. Because you do have very little focus time with them. When you were about to head on to courage, what are some of the things that you encourage leaders to do right now for themselves or for their pipeline to really be in an accelerated pace in building up courage?
Well, the main thing is to realize that people get afraid, which is the opposite of courage, fear, right? And so what are you really afraid of? You're afraid of being judged or pushed out or ostracized or not accepted. Most fear comes from feeling the absence of courage is the feeling that you will be judged badly. And so I can't talk to my skip level, right? I can't talk to my boss. I can't say the hard stuff to my team. I can't. And so fear stops people. And really, I think if you recognize a couple of things, that there are some hard things you're going to have to do. I mean, I'm not going to say it's magical and it's not. The thing is that most outcomes are often made up. You know that the hard thing that you're facing is often the monster in the closet. But if you do shine a flashlight in it, you find it's a bathrobe. You know that it's not a big monster. And so the biggest thing to realize in developing courage for yourself and in really thinking about it and modeling it for your team is to recognize that your voice needs to be heard. That if you don't say the things that need to be said, you are not creating the conditions for the kind of change or for the kind of vision or for the values that you have. And so by holding back, you're actually robbing. If you think of it this way, it will actually prompt you to make movement, I think. You are robbing your organization and yourself of a greater potential. And so a lot of people feel like I can't say that thing. It's like, you have to say that thing because the world deserves to hear you. The world deserves to have your voice, your opinion. You're the person to have that opinion, and that makes you the instrument for the world and for your organization, which is a tinier world. And don't rob the world of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And in an organization that continuously would need to leverage on the talent pool that they have, although the talent shortage is going to be felt very acutely, we need to, as our leaders, we need to empower others to take courage, to step up and to really break free and play a bigger game, if you like. But we, in the 24-hour Woman program, we talk about play a bigger game in your legacy work. And part of playing a bigger game in your legacy work is that you need to, you're right to say that there are certain fears. Well, some of the greatest fears that I see is that the fear of rejection. And I think at the bottom line, we all want to belong, right? But encourage sometimes need us to step up and be a little bit different. But it's okay to be different if you're playing a bigger game. You are bringing a bigger value to to the table. So I encourage the leaders that I work with, particularly if they are in a culture where I would say conformance is an expectation. And very strangely, we recruit people in because of their diversity, but then for them to be included, there are certain rules and regulations or the organization culture that they have to fit into. So that is an oxymoron. How are you going to manage that? But as a leader, as you bring in, even for yourself, as you bring in a diverse voice, as you bring in yourself, you need to be able to step up in courage. And sometimes I tell them, don't need to do all the high elements and bungee jumping and those. I'm talking about you shifting. And by shifting, I'm saying go for a new adventure every weekend. Right? Go for a new adventure. Be aware that even if you go, if you step into something new, nothing's going to explode in your face. Right? Go on a new adventure, talk to a different group of people. And with that, you will begin to chip away fear of rejection, which sometimes never happens. People may welcome you with open arms, and if they don't, hey, there's nothing to lose. What you have done is that you have stepped out of that and into a zone that's different. So I've always appreciated one of my friends who told me, take the first step. The first step changes the scene. And I very often, when I work with leaders on courage, is take that first step. Once you take the first step, you realize it's not so scary after all. Same, I tell them, you need to find ways to encourage your pipeline to take courage. Because that's the precise reason why you have put them in the leadership pipeline, right? They are going to, at some point in time, maybe having to make difficult, challenging decisions, or have the courage to bring in not so good news, which is the other piece. Is sometimes it's not just about a different decision, a different point of view, but sometimes it's about telling people not so good news and having the courage to do so. And I think that would be important, and having the courage to say, I think we had a misstep, but this is how we're going to correct it.
Good.
Rather than sweep it under the carpet and you are building things under a not so strong foundation. right? So that's a lot of learning for myself too when I work with leaders and with their team that we are grooming. So courage is a big piece. What's the next one that you want to walk our leaders on the call through right now in terms of what's the next one they want to do?
I wanted to comment on something you said, just sort of springboard off of it. In my book on choosing your power, I use a 4-letter word that ends in K. And that word is risk. Risk. And it really talks about something that you just alluded to, which is one of the things that you can do to risk is to do one thing different every day. You can practice building your courage by doing one thing different, whether it's going a different way home or having a different type of meal or talking to a different person. One thing different a day gets you in the habit of risk and recognizing that you're surviving. You actually made it. You did something different. You didn't explode. Congratulations, right? So part of choosing your power and stepping into being a dynamic leader is really about being able to risk and recognizing that you will belong because you're leading and people will want you.
Right.
Cool.
What's the next one that you want to deal with in terms of learning?
In terms of learning?
Enabling them to learn. I have next on my list to in terms of leaders, your learning plan right now should include being familiar with with the learning platforms, with the communication platforms that's available. Learn about why people tweet, who's in the community that tweets, when to use, where are the influencers in your area of work. That might be an interesting place for you to start looking at why do people follow them, and how can you develop that kind of how can you learn how to leverage that kind of communication platform. Being a key person of influence obviously is what people would expect of leaders. So and having being able to have your messages out there in a way that is that will be repeated or passed on is a great way to build your grounds in terms of being an influencer. So when it comes to communication, and my point is in terms of learning what the communication platforms out there and when to use them best, that's one. Two, being out there, how often do you actually walk out and have a regular conversation with your staff? Or are you always in your room reading reports, reading emails? Right, but when I say how often do you walk out of your office, it could be virtual too, but it's really finding out what's the heartbeat, what's the pulse of the people out there. Don't wait for another engagement survey for them to tell you what it is. Be out there, schedule that, because there's nothing more important than, nothing worse, in fact, if you send something out and find that it's totally false, flat, in terms of communication, and it doesn't resonate, it doesn't have meaning to the people that's on your team. So part of knowing then when to hop on to the conversation to find that resonance is you must first know what are they talking about, what's closest to their heart, and how do you then shift the conversation or add to that conversation. That's what I would say, yeah.
It used to be called management by wandering around or walking around, MBWA. And years ago, I ran a hospital. I was the administrator of a hospital, and I would schedule, you said schedule it, and I would schedule what I call DOTF, which is day on the floor. And that meant I had no other appointments that day. And it was hard to do, being the administrator. It was difficult to say, okay, I'm not even taking phone calls. I don't have appointments. I would schedule a day on the floor, and I would have my team members put me to work in their roles, and they couldn't believe it, right? What they're getting the administrator to do the beds or to do the sweeping or to do a mop, a bucket when someone's vomiting. Yeah, you know why? Because it's important to know what's going on. Just as you talked about resonance. Well, that's true in industry. Every industry.
I wanted to just reinforce on that, and what you have demonstrated, Wayne, in that is that you really immerse yourself in learning what's happening on the ground.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that is needed even more so, because you just sometimes having the reports coming back up takes time, and depending on the transparency of the organization,
right.
do you really know? No, right? So I love it when my ex-boss used to roll up her sleeve and she just goes down and helps out and be with the front line. She would say, "I'm with the front line today," and that's something. Then she'd be able to gain insights into what's working, what's not working, what they're talking about, and for the team to just be very encouraged that that somebody at that level, they will perceive at that level, actually comes down and cares about what we talk about, what we are doing, right? And from there, you are able then to have greater insights in terms of what is the common ground that you are building on.
Exactly. No, I think that's right. Being the model is, I mean, there's nothing that substitutes for that, and that's been true really throughout the ages of leadership, right? Model who you want to see around you, and you develop it. And you can only model it by knowing who's around you already, and by knowing where the organization is that's your baseline. And so it gets back to, we both talked about clarity. It gets back to the first trait that we talked about for leaders is clarity. If you don't know what your baseline is, you can't be clear about where you're headed. So really get very clear, and then you can get very clear. And that's how you can build leadership.
We have about 10 minutes left for the webinar, and I'd like to just at this point pause and say, if you have any questions at all for Wayne or myself, put them into the chat box or private message me, and we will try our best to get your questions answered on this particular call. My final one in helping leaders now and their pipeline understand a little bit more in terms of how do we deal with the complexities that's happening, constructive depolarization. How do I train my brain to practice that, right? Because very often when we get information in, we tend to compartmentalize it, and then so I always tell them, whatever messages that you are receiving and you are sort of deciding which folder it goes into, ask yourself, what assumptions do I have based on what I've just heard and what I'm about to do? Because the assumptions will then tell us file it away, or the assumptions will tell us that's nonsense. The assumptions will tell us that's not true, or that's only for her. So what are the assumptions when the team starts giving you information or their opinions? Constructive depolarization means you hold all your assumptions and let them just talk through and form the picture before you decide. So at the end of the meeting, you could just ask yourself very simply, did I make a judgment too soon? Right? Did I make a judgment too soon? And that will help you be more and more aware in terms of how do I deal with this beautiful bucket of diverse thoughts that I've been given, and make sense out of that. Wayne, what about yourself? You have there are a couple more that I did not touch on in terms of helping our leaders listening in to develop their learning plan for. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more? How can they build their learning plan on circling back, for example?
I think circling back is really important in terms of knowing what your gate checks are. Where are you? Do you have milestones? And do you have people who are responsible for celebrating those milestones, for communicating those milestones, and for actually carrying out a plan to get you there? I think all of those are very standard in terms of the way most businesses operate. I hope. That you have this grand vision, and there are steps to get there, right? So there's this mountain you're climbing, and it's not you take a leap and you get there, but you know, you're climbing, and did you make it? What went right? What went wrong? How do you make what went right even better? How do you eliminate what went wrong? So again, it's, you know, circling back is about communication. It's about gathering the key players and talking it through. There's one other thing that's totally unrelated that I want to go back to, because it's back in my mind. I haven't said it yet. I think it's asking our leaders that are watching this or listening to this, on a scale of 1 to 10, would you say you're an inspirational leader? How inspirational would you say you are? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how much would you say you're an organizational leader? Inspirational or organizational? And I think you need to take a look at that balance, because really both need to be high. And in my working with leaders, what I've realized is that there are some that are just dynamic. They're out there. They want you to get what they have. And it's great because there's great energy. They love it. You love them because they're so inspirational, and you'll follow them. They may not know what's going on in the organization. They may not be the ones that spend the day on the floor really learning what the baseline is. And so there are others that are organizational, and they're the ones reading the reports and doing the analysis, and they know which way to head because their head's down all the time. And that's great. It's necessary. And what's really necessary is that you have somebody that you can believe in because they're passionate about where they're headed, and that they know what they're talking about. And so I want you, as you're listening to this or watching this, to ask yourself, am I an organizational leader or am I an inspirational leader? Or is it possible to be both? And how do I get to be both? And so really the 5 key traits of leaders, I think, that Cheryl and I have both been walking it through, are going to help to get you through. I'm going to list mine again. And then maybe you'll list yours again.
Sure.
We can wrap up.
Go ahead.
Mine again are clarity, right? Be really clear. What do you value? Who are you? What's your vision? If you don't have a vision, how are other people going to follow you, right? So I believe in this. This is where we're headed is a really great statement. Credibility. Doing what you say, saying what you do, saying what you mean, and meaning what you say. That's what credibility is. And you have to have that sincerity and that authenticity. One of the best compliments that I got from a senior vice president in a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate when I worked with him doing high-performance coaching, he said that I helped him develop his authenticity. And that was like, that just surprised me as the first word that came out of him. And at the same time, I realized that's what he was lacking, that he was doing what he was supposed to be doing versus really living, and oh, by the way, doing what he's supposed to be doing because he was living. And so be credible, be the real person as a leader, not pretending to be a leader or putting on your leader suit in one moment and being somebody totally different in the next. So be authentic. That's the credibility. Have courage. Risk. Do one thing different a day. Have the hard conversation. Meet with somebody that you've been putting off meeting with, and watch what happens. And in fact, both Cheryl and I have emails, and you can find them on our websites, that we want to hear. We have Facebook pages. We want to hear from you that you've actually chosen to risk or do something different, and you've gone out, and what happened to you, right? Did you get fired? I doubt it. Did you get people to go, oh, probably. So have that courage. Do something slightly different. Communication, it's got to come from you, right? So be really clear about where you're headed, what you want to do, and let people know about it. One of my biggest failings as a leader and manager was to get a bunch of stuff done and then not talk about it. Nobody knew that I'd been doing all these things. And I thought, hey, I'm getting so much done, and we're doing this, and we're doing that, and we're heading this direction. We weren't heading anywhere. I was creating this plan, and nobody knew about it. So communication is so important. And it was a great lesson. It was early on in my management career, early on in my leadership career, and I learned so much from that failure. It was great. So communicate. That's an incredibly important piece. And then circling back, did you hit the things that you needed to hit along the way? Are you getting to where you wanted to go? So think about, where am I heading? What's the next level? Where am I heading? What's the next level? With whether it's a project, whether it's staff development, whether it's productivity or a profitability milestone, are you heading there? And is everything you do, is it lining up behind your vision? And is it getting you closer to that that milestone? And that's what circling back is really double checking that you've hit those major points.
Right. So my 5 were clarity in an increasing complex world. Clarity not about how we're going to get there, but clarity as to what is that destination, or where do you want the organization to go to. It might be totally the opposite of what you are right now. How do you get people to believe you and get there if you don't have a sense of clarity as to, okay, this is what get there means, right? So that's one clarity. And if you don't know right now, it's okay. Sit down, journal, and make it a discovery process, right? In terms of where do you want to lead the people to be, and what kind of leader do you want to be known for? And that's what I refer to when I work with my women leaders, the legacy work of the 24-hour woman. Next piece is on courage. Can't emphasize that enough. And every single day, do something that will shift for yourself. And all that I'm talking about right now in terms of the development plan, you can do it, or you can encourage your pipeline to be doing the same, so that they are already gearing up and getting into that mindset and that developing that skill set. But for them, particularly, always be building in the conversation around aspiration, their aspiration in all this area. So clarity, courage. The next one I have is building commons, knowing what are the commons and then raising the standard. Knowing what are the commons and build upon that to create a new common, a new value that will be bought in, that is not just bought in, but would be embraced and it resonates within each individual that you have in your organization. And if it doesn't, then what would you do about that? So that's your call as a leader going into the future, because you're going to have talent pool that's going to come from all over the places, across different cultures, gender, generations, abilities, etc. So how do you bring somebody on board? And the big piece I would say is that let's just measure on what matters most, right? And then let that be one of the criteria or parameters for your decision making. Next one I had was about communication, but more about finding the resonance in the communication and using the new platforms that's available right now to build on those resonance in terms of your messaging. The final one is in terms of our own ability to withhold judgment in terms of constructive depolarization, to hear the voices that's in the room, suspend our judgment until the very end, until we take a decision. So do not jump ahead because of our assumption, but hold all the voices, in a sense, the voices or the thoughts that's in your head, so that the quietest person in the room has a say, because the quietest person in the room might actually have the most insightful perspective. My name is Cheryl. If you have any questions for Wayne and I, feel free to email us or email me, and I will have a session with Wayne to get those answers to you. Email me at solutions@lifeworkz.asia. That's where you can email your questions or post your questions on our Facebook, on my Facebook page called LifeWorkz Consulting, and then we'll get back to you. The other thing is, if you want to reach out to Wayne or myself with regards to any of the leadership development needs for yourself as a coach, all coming in to help you to develop your leadership pipeline. You can find me at Cheryl at LifeWorkz.Asia, and for Wayne.
Thanks. Again, I am dynamicleader.com, dynamicleader.com, and you can reach me at drp@waynepernell.com. That's my email address. The best way is probably click through on dynamicleader.com. It's easier to remember. Dynamicleader.com, because that's who you're becoming, isn't it? Yes, and that's also where you can download a free workbook for yourself as well. So please join me, dynamicleader.com. Join Cheryl, LifeWorkz Asia, right?
Yes, LifeWorkz.Asia. Well, Wayne, one final word for our contemporary leaders leading into the future.
One final word.
Yes.
You know, I go back to, what do you want out of being a leader, right? And so it really talks about, for me, all I speak to is what drives me, is what gets people to be that dynamic leader, is the clarity, the energy, the productivity, the courage, the influence, those key pieces, in addition to the traits we've talked about, the work that we do as high performance coaches, right? So that's gigantic. So I would love for people to take on the 5 traits of leaders, and for you to really work on the other pieces about developing yourself in 5 key productive areas as well.
Right. So my final take in terms of leading into the future, and we do a lot of work in terms of leading in 2025. My final take is, do not be dismayed. You know, take courage. It is, as a leader, always know that leaders are always learners first. So you are in a good place, and we've just had a wonderful webinar sharing with you what are some of the things that you can do yourself right now in putting together your own learning plan. My name is Cheryl. I look forward to welcoming you in another talent innovation session. So from Wayne and I, thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.